So what is it that really truly makes you, you? I mean, is it your DNA, your upbringing? Maybe something else entirely? Well, today we are going to dive into the fascinating science of personality to figure that out. Have you ever just stopped to think about it? Why are you the way you are? Why are some of us the life of the party, while others would much rather find a quiet corner? These aren't just random quirks. Psychologists actually have a name for them, personality traits. And believe it or not, they form a pretty consistent pattern all throughout your life. Okay, so before we can really unpack where personality even comes from, we kind of have to agree on what it is. So let's start there with a clear blueprint. In psychology, personality isn't just, a vibe or a feeling. It's got a real definition. It's your characteristic set of behaviors, thoughts, and emotions. And the key phrase right there is relatively stable. It's that consistent thread that runs through you. It's why the person who's super organized and meticulous at work is probably the same person who plans their vacations down to the very last hour. And this, of course, brings us to the central mystery, the big question in all of personality psychology, the age-old debate of nature versus nurture. I mean, are we just born this way, or does the world around us shape us into who we are? Well, as you might have guessed, the real answer is it's a complicated cocktail of both. Our nature, that's our genetics, the stuff we're born with. You can even spot that innate temperament in little tiny babies. But our nurture, well, that's literally everything else. How we were raised, our culture, all the unique experiences we have. And these two things, they don't just add up. They're constantly interacting, dancing with each other to shape who we eventually become. So if personality is this incredibly complex mix, how on earth can we even begin to measure it? Well, it turns out the most successful approach has been something called trait theory, which basically tries to create a map of the fundamental dimensions of human personality. The core idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's also really profound. It suggests that we all have these stable internal qualities, or traits. And by measuring where we fall on each of them, we can get a surprisingly clear picture of who someone is and even how they're likely to act. And I'm almost certain you've run into this idea before. Pop culture is just filled with personality quizzes, right? The most famous one is probably the Myers-Briggs, which sorts everybody into one of 16 different types. It's a really popular way to start thinking about all this stuff. But in the actual world of personality psychology, the gold standard, the model that has the most scientific evidence backing it up, is called the five-factor model. You've probably heard of it as the Big Five. These five traits, which you can remember with the handy acronym OCEAN, are seen as the fundamental building blocks of our personality. And it's not about being one or the other. It's about where you land on each spectrum. So openness, that's your curiosity and creativity. Conscientiousness is all about organization and discipline. It's actually a huge predictor of job success. Extroversion is about where you get your energy from, social interaction or quiet time. Agreeableness is about compassion and cooperation. And finally, neuroticism has to do with your emotional stability or your tendency to feel things like anxiety. And science doesn't just stand still. As researchers studied personality across tons of different cultures, they developed what's called the Hexaco model. It refines the original five and then adds a really crucial sixth dimension: honesty, humility. This trait, which captures things like sincerity and fairness, turned out to be absolutely essential for understanding the moral side of personality that the Big Five didn't quite cover. Okay, so trait theory is incredibly powerful for describing personality, for telling us what we're like. But other theories try to get at the why. Why do we have these traits in the first place? So let's look through a few of those different lenses. First up, the psychodynamic perspective. This was pioneered by Sigmund Freud, and it argues that the most important parts of our personality are actually hidden from us, deep down in our unconscious mind. The whole idea is that we're often driven by desires and conflicts we don't even know we have. And to deal with all the anxiety from these hidden conflicts, Freud believed our minds come up with these clever little tricks called defense mechanisms. For example, with repression, we just push a scary thought out of our minds. With projection, we take a feeling we don't like in ourselves and pin it on someone else, like you accuse your friend of being selfish when maybe you're the one feeling selfish. And then there's sublimation, which is actually pretty constructive. That's when we channel all that negative energy into something positive, like working out or creating art. All right, now for a complete 180. A totally different perspective argues that personality isn't really internal at all. The learning perspective suggests our personality is just the sum of all our learned behaviors. I mean, think about it. If a kid is constantly praised for being quiet and studious, they're probably more likely to grow up into a reserved adult, right? From this point of view, we are completely shaped by a lifetime of rewards, punishments, and just watching what other people do.
So we've got traits, we've got unconscious drives, we've got learned behaviors. How in the world do we put all these pieces together? Well, this brings us to a really important final distinction we need to make.
Okay, this is so important. Your personality, those consistent patterns we've been talking about, that's a huge part of you, no doubt. But it's not the whole story. Your individuality is the much bigger picture. It's your personality, sure, but it's combined with your unique life story, your personal values, your skills, the choices you make. It is the complete, one-of-a-kind package that makes you, you. Ultimately, there's no single theory that has all the answers. The real truth is that you are this dynamic interplay of all these forces. Your genes, your experiences, your hidden motives, and the totally unique way you see the world, they all come together to create the person you are right at this very moment. So in the end, your personality is really the collection of your most consistent patterns. It's the blueprint for how you typically think, feel, and behave. And so the only real question left is this: what story do your patterns tell about you?